"I speak 10 languages," said the young Latina. The judge laughed, then was left speechless. The courtroom was colder than it needed to be. High ceilings, hard benches, and eyes that clung to Mia Turner like a swarm of flies. She stood silently at the defendant's table, chin lifted, fingers clasped tightly in front of her. 26 years old, small-framed, with eyes that flickered not with fear, but fury. Across from her, the prosecution clicked on the final slide of a presentation designed to reduce her to ash. "Ladies and gentlemen," Assistant District Attorney Keller said, pacing in front of the jury box. "This woman posed as a certified translator in 10 languages. No degrees, no accreditations, no formal training. And yet she managed to secure contracts with 3 corporations, 2 embassies, and a federal agency." He let that sink in before turning to face her, arms wide. "She is either a prodigy or a fraud, and we have no documentation supporting the former." Laughter rippled softly from the benches behind her, just enough to make Mia's stomach tighten. She glanced up at the judge, an older man with a lined face and an impatient tap in his gavel hand. "And what do you have to say to these charges, Ms. Turner?" the judge asked. Mia stood. Her voice rang out clearer than she thought it would. "I want to prove it." The courtroom hushed. "I speak those 10 languages, fluently, professionally. I want the chance to demonstrate that." The judge blinked, leaning back in his seat. "This isn't a talent show, Ms. Turner. I'm not trying to entertain you, Your Honor. I'm trying to prove that I'm not a fraud." Keller let out a short, dry laugh. "We're in a court of law, not an open mic night. Fluency isn't just about speaking quickly. It's about grammar, nuance, cultural literacy." "I know that," Mia interrupted, fire flaring in her chest. "And I can demonstrate all of it. Let your experts test me." The judge rubbed his temples. "Ms. Turner, this is highly irregular." "Because this whole case is irregular," she snapped, then caught herself. A breath. "Your Honor, I'm being judged for not having pieces of paper. But I have the skill. I never claimed to have degrees. I was hired for the work and I did it well. Let me prove it. That's all I'm asking." The room buzzed again. Some reporters leaned forward in their seats. Mia's attorney, a court-appointed man with tired eyes and a too loose tie, looked up at her like she'd grown a second head. The judge leaned forward. "You're serious?" "I am." He exhaled. "I'll consider it. Court is adjourned for the day." The gavel struck, just once. Outside the courthouse, the air was too loud. Cameras, questions, flashbulbs. Mia slipped through the crowd unnoticed. Hoodie pulled low, earbuds in, no music playing. Just silence. She walked until the buildings thinned and the noise died, ending up in front of the small apartment where her story had begun long before anyone accused her of fraud. She unlocked the door and stepped into the quiet. Stacks of books lined every corner of the apartment. Dictionaries in Russian, language guides in Swahili, grammar workbooks in Farsi, annotated poetry in French. Mia had read them all, studied them like scripture. Because long before she was the girl with the fake resume, she was just the quiet kid sitting on the stairs of embassy houses in D.C., listening to diplomats' children chatter in every tongue under the sun. Her grandmother, Alma Turner, had cleaned their kitchens and ironed their suits, and Mia had sat with her every day after school, tucked behind doorways or under tables, absorbing words like light. "Mama Alma," she whispered into the air now, picking up an old framed photo of the woman in a blue maid's uniform, smiling beside an embassy Christmas tree. "You knew I was going to need this, didn't you?" No one had believed her story. Why would they? No degrees, no tutors, no record, just talent. And talent without a license was a threat. She remembered the first time she translated a diplomatic note. It had been for a family friend, a Filipino consul's wife whose English was shaky. Mia had translated the letter into perfect Tagalog, and the woman had wept. Not because it was correct, but because it was kind. That was the difference. Mia didn't translate with words. She translated with intention. But none of that mattered to the prosecution. Back in court the next morning, the energy was different. Someone had leaked her request to be tested live, and now the gallery was full. Reporters, curious citizens, linguists even. She spotted a few she recognized from university publications, their arms crossed, brows skeptical. The judge wasted no time. Ms. Turner, against my better judgment, I've approved a panel of 3 linguistic experts to evaluate your proficiency across the 10 languages listed in your case file. They are credentialed, neutral, and have no prior connection to you. The evaluation will take place tomorrow morning. Keller stood. This is unprecedented, Your Honor. I agree, the judge said, voice sharp. But if the defense is so confident, I'll allow it. He turned to Mia. You understand, Ms. Turner, that this panel can and will determine whether you're telling the truth or further wasting this court's time. Mia nodded once. Yes, Your Honor. The judge narrowed his eyes. And if you fail? I won't. That was the moment everything changed. The room had expected her to plead, to apologize, to try for a lesser charge. Instead, she stood there in her worn blazer, speaking like someone who knew, like someone who didn't just believe she was right. She was right. The judge gave a thin smile. Then let's see what happens when the world listens. The courtroom had transformed. Gone were the tense glares and whispered judgments of the previous day. Now, the benches were packed with observers, some leaning forward with notebooks open, others tapping rapidly on phones. A live feed camera had been approved under media pressure. The trial of Mia Turner was no longer just a legal proceeding. It had become a public spectacle. 3 experts sat behind the witness table. At the center was Dr. Nathaniel Whitman, a towering figure in the world of comparative linguistics. Tenured at Columbia, published in 5 languages, and known for his withering academic critiques. To his left, a quiet but sharp-eyed interpreter from the UN named Amara Solano, and to his right, Professor Elias Novak, a multilingual sociolinguist from MIT, a translator's gauntlet. The judge, already exhausted, cleared his throat. Ms. Turner will begin with Mandarin Chinese. Dr. Whitman will read a passage. You will listen, then translate it into English, then into Russian, then French. Mia nodded calmly. She was dressed more professionally today, dark suit, hair tied back, but it wasn't the clothes that silenced the room. It was her stillness, that unnerving calm, as if she'd been waiting years for this moment. Dr. Whitman cleared his throat and began to read. The passage was technical, drawn from a government contract involving infrastructure, heavy on bureaucratic phrasing. Mia didn't blink. When he finished, she translated it seamlessly into English, not just word for word, but with contextual clarity. Her Russian followed, sharp and elegant. Her French, smooth and precise. Professor Novak interrupted. Excuse me, Ms. Turner. In the Russian version, you used podriachik instead of contractor. Was that intentional? Mia turned slightly toward him. Yes. Podriachik is more common in government and civil projects. Contractor leans more toward military or Western business slang. In this context, public roadworks, podriachik is more accurate. There was a pause. Novak leaned back, blinking. They moved on. Arabic, Spanish, Farsi, German. Each language came rapid fire, different dialects, cultural nuances, slang. Mia didn't hesitate. She adjusted her tone, syntax, even body language, like she'd lived entire lives in each language. And in a way, she had. The observers began to murmur, louder each time she spoke. The live tweeting journalist in the second row, her phone screen flashing every few seconds, had already gone viral under the hashtag Trial of Tongues. By the time they reached Swahili, even Dr. Whitman's expression had changed from smug amusement to tight discomfort. Then came the Serbian test. Amara Solano read the passage, a poem rich in idioms and metaphor. Mia listened, her eyes narrowing. When it was her turn, she paused for the first time. Then she smiled. In the 3rd stanza, she said, the phrase progutati nedlu is translated in the test version as swallowing dumplings. That's a literal translation, but idiomatically it means to swallow one's pride, or to accept something unpleasant, A ripple of laughter passed through the linguist's bench. Mia continued, tone even. It's a common mistake for non-native speakers to translate idioms literally. And how would you translate the full stanza? Whitman asked. She did, and it was beautiful. Not just correct, but poetic. Novak scribbled something. Amara whispered to Whitman, who didn't respond. The tension snapped when the judge finally said, "Well, I think we can all agree. Ms. Turner has proven her fluency." Mia raised a hand. "There's one more." A silence fell like a dropped pin. The judge blinked. "I believe we've covered all 10 languages listed." "I speak 11, Mia said, her voice calm, "and I'd like to demonstrate it." Whitman narrowed his eyes. "Which language?" Mia turned to him directly. "Hebrew." A flicker of something, was it fear, crossed Whitman's face. He hesitated. "That's not one of the languages in question." "No," Mia said evenly. "But the passage used in yesterday's filing response, the Hebrew appendix, you wrote it, correct?" "Yes," he said too quickly. "It wasn't yours," she said. There it was. The silence, the shift. Like the room had taken one collective breath and forgot to release it. She reached into her folder and pulled out an old notebook, aged, frayed at the corners. She flipped to a handwritten page and held it up. "This is my work. This Hebrew text was a private translation I did years ago. Unpublished. Uncredited. It's mine. Down to the phrasing of a metaphor I invented. Like glass melting under moonlight, which doesn't exist in standard Hebrew idiom." Amara leaned forward, eyes sharp. "You're saying this academic document was plagiarized?" "Yes," Mia said. "By Dr. Whitman." He scoffed. "That's outrageous." "Then explain why the metaphor appears nowhere else in Hebrew literature," she said, "and why my notebook, dated 3 years ago, contains the same syntax, the same poetic structure, even the same line breaks." The judge frowned. "Dr. Whitman, is this true?" He shifted in his seat. "There must be some mistake." Mia stepped forward, calm as ever. "Do you know how I got that translation published in the first place? I submitted it to a private language symposium under a pseudonym. You were one of the attending scholars. I recognized your name. You're accusing me of academic theft based on poetic phrasing. I'm proving it," she said. "And if you allow a handwriting expert to examine this and compare digital timestamps," Amara interrupted. "Your Honor, I'd like to request an independent review of the material." Whitman sat frozen. The judge rubbed his jaw. "That may be warranted." Mia turned slightly toward the crowd, not to show off, but because she had nothing to hide. The courtroom didn't erupt, but it didn't have to. The energy shifted. Mia hadn't just proven her fluency. She'd exposed something rotten. "Doctor." Whitman remained stone-faced, but his silence screamed louder than any outburst. The crowd poured out into the corridor, buzzing with theories. Reporters clutched their phones like lifelines. The live tweeting journalist was now broadcasting updates in real time. Turner just accused Whitman of plagiarism. Court stunned. Possible academic scandal brewing. Inside, the judge called a recess. The experts huddled. Whitman didn't reappear. Mia stood alone in the hallway, facing the window. The city moved below her like another language, chaotic, coded, full of messages. Her phone buzzed, a text from a number she didn't recognize. "They're watching now. Be careful." She stared at the screen. No signature, no clue. But for the first time, the adrenaline faded, and fear began to whisper. The courtroom reconvened under a heavier sky. Not literally. Outside, Manhattan moved as it always did. But inside the walls of that chamber, something had shifted. The confidence that once ruled the prosecution's table had thinned into tension. Dr. Whitman sat rigidly, shoulders tight, eyes avoiding the gallery. His reputation, once immovable, now rested on a fault line. The judge entered without ceremony and took his seat. "Before we proceed," he said, voice measured, "this court has authorized a preliminary review of the plagiarism allegation raised yesterday. Digital timestamps, Authorship markers and expert handwriting comparisons are underway. Whitman swallowed. The prosecutor stood. Your Honor, we request to continue with witness testimony while the review is conducted. Granted, the judge replied. His gaze lingered on Whitman just long enough to make the discomfort unmistakable. Mia remained seated, hands folded in her lap. She had slept little. The anonymous message from the night before echoed in her mind, not as fear, but as confirmation. She had crossed an invisible line. Proving her innocence was no longer the only thing at stake. The prosecution called their next witness. Mr. Liang Wang. A man in an expensive gray suit stood slowly from the back row. He looked out of place now, less powerful than he had in the affidavits that had helped build the case against Mia. His steps toward the stand were cautious, like each one carried weight. Mia recognized him immediately. Wang had been one of her earliest corporate clients. International logistics, high-level negotiations. He had praised her work, thanked her personally. Then, months later, his written complaint had described her translations as unreliable and professionally misleading. It had hurt more than the others. Wang was sworn in. He adjusted his tie, eyes darting briefly toward Mia before fixing on the judge. Mr. Wang, the prosecutor began, you previously testified that Ms. Turner's translations caused significant confusion within your company, correct? Wang hesitated. Yes, he said finally, that was my statement. And you stand by it? Silence. The courtroom leaned forward as one. Wang cleared his throat. Your Honor, before I answer that, I need to clarify something. The judge raised an eyebrow. Go on. Wang's hands trembled slightly as he gripped the edge of the stand. Ms. Turner's translations were flawless. A murmur erupted instantly. The prosecutor spun. Mr. Wang. They were precise, Wang continued, voice strengthening as if something long suppressed was finally breaking free. Technically accurate, culturally sensitive. In fact, they prevented misunderstandings during a merger negotiation with our European partners. The judge struck the gavel once. Order. The prosecutor stared at Wang in disbelief. Then why did you file a formal complaint claiming professional incompetence? Wang exhaled sharply. Because I was instructed to. Every eye in the room locked onto him. Instructed by whom? The judge asked. My board, Wang said. During a merger. There were internal pressures. Ms. Turner wasn't the problem. Her lack of credentials made her convenient. The words hit the room like falling glass. She didn't have degrees, Wang continued, and that made her expendable, a risk on paper. I was told to denounce her or lose my position. I chose my job. He turned finally to look directly at Mia. I'm sorry. Mia didn't react, not outwardly. Inside, something tight loosened, a knot she hadn't realized she'd been carrying. The prosecutor stammered. Your Honor, this contradicts prior sworn testimony. Yes, the judge said coldly. It does. Wang straightened. I am prepared to submit written correspondence and internal memoranda supporting my statement. The courtroom buzzed, louder this time. Reporters scribbled furiously. Phones vibrated with alerts. The judge nodded slowly. The court will accept those documents. He turned toward the panel of linguists. Dr. Solano, Professor Novak, based on your evaluation, do you have any doubts about Ms. Turner's professional competence? Amara Solano stood without hesitation. None, Your Honor. Her fluency exceeds professional standards. Novak followed. Ms. Turner demonstrates native-level proficiency across multiple language families. Her work reflects deep cultural immersion, not surface-level study. The judge leaned back, considering. And Dr. Whitman? He asked quietly. All eyes shifted. Whitman rose stiffly. I stand by my academic record. The judge's gaze sharpened. That wasn't the question. Whitman's jaw clenched. Based on the evaluation alone, Ms. Turner is competent. Thank you, the judge said. Sit down. Whitman did so slowly, his confidence visibly eroded. The judge turned to the prosecution. Given the recanted testimony, the expert evaluations, and the ongoing investigation into academic misconduct, this court finds no basis to continue fraud charges against Ms. Turner. The words landed with finality. A wave of sound surged through the room. Gasps, whispers, restrained applause quickly silenced by the gavel. Ms. Turner, the judge continued, his tone softer now, you have been wrongfully accused. Mia stood. This court formally dismisses all charges. He paused, then added something rare, something no one had expected. I owe you an apology. The room stilled completely. I allowed skepticism to overshadow evidence, the judge said. You were judged for lacking credentials rather than evaluated for your skill. That was a failure of this court. Mia met his eyes. Thank you, Your Honor. The gavel struck. Outside, the courthouse steps exploded with noise. Cameras, microphones, questions shouted from every angle. Mia, is it true you speak 11 languages? Do you plan to sue? Is this the beginning of a larger scandal? She moved through the crowd, escorted but untouched, the weight of vindication settling slowly. She had imagined this moment so many times, victory, relief, triumph. But something else lingered beneath it. Unease. As she reached the edge of the crowd, a hand brushed her sleeve. She turned. Wong stood there, quieter now. You should know, he said under his breath. This didn't start with me. There were people very interested in discrediting you. Mia's eyes narrowed. Who? Wong shook his head. I don't know. But when powerful people get nervous, they don't stop easily. Before she could respond, he disappeared into the crowd. Mia stepped into the street, the city roaring around her. Her phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. You won the trial, not the war. She closed her eyes for a moment, breathing in the cold air. She was free, cleared, proven, and somehow more exposed than ever. Mia Turner didn't celebrate. There were no interviews, no parties, no revenge speeches delivered to cameras. After the trial ended, she simply went home. The same tiny apartment, the same creaky floorboards, the same dusty shelves packed with foreign dictionaries and worn notebooks. But everything felt different now. Not freer, not safer. Just open, like a door had been forced wide, revealing something vast and unseen behind it. She hadn't slept well since her exoneration, and the strange, anonymous texts hadn't stopped. No more threats, but short, unsettling phrases, warnings, echoes of things she hadn't said out loud. She knew too much. Geneva isn't just a place, it's a key. Ask what happened in 1997. And then the envelope. It arrived with no return address, just her name, typed. Inside was a single object, a faded notebook, her grandmother's. Mia recognized the handwriting instantly. Alma Turner's elegant looping script, written in multiple languages. Codes, symbols, fragments of journal entries, dates, locations. She sat at her kitchen table as the snow fell outside, flipping through the pages, heart thudding with every turn. The entries started innocuously, lists of chores, short translations, notes on embassy gossip. But midway through, the tone changed. They think I don't understand what I see, but I do. Children taken, documents forged. The Argentine envoy is nervous. Locked everything in Geneva, Vault 7. Mia's breath caught. Geneva. She flipped faster now, more names. Some redacted in black ink, but others, partially coded, stood out. References to diplomats she remembered from her childhood, places she'd overheard mentioned in hushed tones. One line chilled her more than any other. If I vanish, it won't be natural. Mia must one day find the vault. The air seemed to still around her. She hadn't known. She'd always believed her grandmother had died of a heart condition. Natural causes. But now, doubt seeped in like smoke. She called the only person she trusted to help her decode the notebook. Darren Malik, a former linguistics PhD turned cyberforensics analyst. He'd been 2 years ahead of her in a university she never graduated from, but they'd once bonded over obscure etymological roots in Mongolian loanwords. He answered on the second ring. "Still cracking secrets without a license?" he said, amused. "Still running from tenure?" she shot back. Within an hour, Darren was at her apartment, scanning pages of the notebook, murmuring to himself. He didn't laugh, didn't dismiss her, because the patterns were real. "She used cipher switching," he muttered. "Classic Cold War move. Alternating language-based codes every few lines, Hebrew, Tagalog, and a numeric cipher tied to birth dates. She was trying to keep this from someone." Mia leaned in. "Can you break it?" "I can try," he said. "But some of these codes, they look like internal embassy identifiers. Stuff not public." They worked through the night. By dawn, they had cracked enough of the notes to piece together a picture. In the early 1990s, Alma Turner had stumbled onto a human trafficking network operating through diplomatic channels. Under the cover of diplomatic immunity, certain embassies were allegedly involved in transporting minors across borders. She had documented conversations, named individuals, stored forged documents as proof, and she had hidden it all in Vault 7 at a Swiss private bank in Geneva. Mia stared at the page where the vault was mentioned, the handwriting more jagged than usual. "Don't trust anyone with a flag on their lapel." Her phone rang, unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. A man's voice, calm, distorted slightly, like filtered through software. "You're digging in soil that buries its own dead, Ms. Turner." Mia froze. "Who is this?" "You speak 11 languages," the voice said. "You should know one more." Silence. Click. She lowered the phone slowly. Darren looked at her. That sounded like a threat. "It was a warning," Mia said. "There's something they still don't want found." That night she couldn't sleep. She packed instead. Her grandmother had taught her to trust instincts over rules, that the truth mattered more than approval. And if what she was seeing was true, it meant Alma Turner hadn't just raised her. She had prepared her. The next morning, as snow blanketed the city, Mia zipped her coat, slung a backpack over her shoulder, and slipped the notebook inside, along with her translator's earpiece, a pocket phrasebook, and a burner phone. She turned off the lights, locked the door, and stepped out. She didn't get far. Halfway down the stairwell, she heard it. Click. Her apartment door, creaking open upstairs. Mia froze. Heavy footsteps inside. Not subtle. Not scared. She backed down 2 steps at a time, heart hammering. Someone was in her apartment, less than 5 minutes after she'd left it. She didn't wait to find out who. By the time the sun hit the tarmac at JFK, she was through security, passport in hand. The Swiss visa had been expedited thanks to a friend of a friend at the consulate. No luggage, no distractions. She boarded the plane with a single carry-on, and her grandmother's secrets clutched tight. As the aircraft soared over the Atlantic, Mia looked out the window, her reflection framed by clouds. She had won the trial. But the war had only just begun. And now, in Geneva, behind a locked vault, lay the truth that might rewrite everything she thought she knew, not just about her grandmother but about herself.